It all began in 1910, a century ago, when Loras College was still Columbia College, and this brand new theater seated an audience of over 1,000. Father I.J. Semper organized the first student dramatic club and kicked off something much bigger than he could have imagined: 100 years of the Loras Players. In all, Semper would stage 57 productions in the St. Joseph Theater. He was undoubtedly the driving force responsible for launching the proud tradition of what is now the oldest, consecutively running amateur theater company west of the Mississippi. Unfortunately, there is little written on his work, but his legacy was most certainly passed on to 4 directors who followed him. 4 directors whose service has totaled nearly 70 years of Loras Player tradition. A priest, a married couple, and a professional actor-director who have each left their unique mark on the group and inspired students for generations. In 1939, the Loras Players staged a change that would last nearly 30 years when Father Carl Schrader took over. He cast a larger-than-life presence with his bold personality. He was known on campus as King Carl. Under his direction, watching the Loras Players became a spectacular theatrical experience.
I thought Father Schrader was a genius. Everybody did.
He had such an outstanding reputation as for being such a gifted man.
He had ideas, knowledge, and he was daring enough to put them into action.
You never knew what he was going to say. And so this one day, it must have been probably cold, chilly November, and I had this red coat on with the hood up over my head, and I met my Father Schrader, and he said, "Well, Little Red Riding Hood, how are you today?"
When they decided to have girls in the plays at Loras, he called me.
I mean, it had to be very good, or you wouldn't be cast in a Father Schrader production.
I was supposed to be an irate young woman, and after I read somebody out on stage, someone did applaud. Many years later, they told me it was Father Carl Schrader.
It was that kind of fun and that kind of spirit that you got to know Father Carl Schrader.
I'm an old altar boy from way back, so you know, I was taught to be very polite to priests. So made eye contact, you know, "Hi, Father," and he says, "Hi, how are you? Come in here. Who are you?" You know, so he's more or less summoned you. That was Father's style, you know. And so we chatted for a little bit, and he said, "Well, come up on Friday for a drink, huh?" And I did what I was told.
He brought some of the biggest names in Hollywood, including the famed Eugene Loring and his dancers, to the Loras stage. He built an aura around the theater that drew everyone in the community to his dynamic shows. He knew it was all about showbiz, the bigger the better, and he got his actors to believe it too.
Never did I feel we were ready for the real show when we had the dress rehearsal. Never. And I thought, this is never going to fly, but it always did.
His plays were spectacular, and they were as good as any Broadway production would ever be.
Despite the fact that this was a small college, you know, in a small town in the Midwest, that didn't seem to concern him too much. He said, "We're putting this thing on, we're going to make as good a production out of it as we can," and so he just sort of took a sort of Broadway mentality to the productions.
And it was always, I mean, usually a full house, because you knew it was just going to be an outstanding production. People that were in his plays really admired him very much.
He could be funny, but he was always well prepared.
He was intimidating, but apparently that was his style, and apparently, you know, people learned from him.
You knew he had a wonderful heart. You knew he was kind and caring and concerned, but he didn't want you to know that. You know, he wanted to be this strong, stern professor.
He was everything. He loved theater. He knew all the ins and outs about theater, and if he didn't, he made it his duty to find out.
Anything that Father Carl Schrader did was done to perfection.
I had such a wonderful time. It was an experience I would wish for almost anybody.
He had made a name for Loras College with his theater work.